Here we are for the test recording on February 6th, 2024.
We're here in Norway together. It's cold outside. Now.
Grumble, grumble.
Rant.
Power platform. Blah, blah, blah.
Copilot.
Yeah. Whoop, whoop. Thank you for listening.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Power Platform Boost podcast, your timely source of Power Platform news and updates with your hosts, Nick Dolman and Ulrike Ackerbeck.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, I'm good.
When we're here, once again, across the table.
And usually we did this.
We do that high five. Woohoo!
Whoop, whoop. Yeah, so you're here in Norway again.
Yes.
Yes? Why are you here? Want to tell the people?
I don't know. I'm here all the time. I just sort of end up here.
No, I so ask you this week if you moved here already.
Quite a few people already saying, "Oh, do you live here now?" I was here for the Arctic Cloud Developer Challenge, plus a few other projects that I'm working on here. And you were there as well. You're the one who originally kind of got me in to put this on my radar years ago. And last year I was a judge. This year as a competitor.
Yep.
And I'd be quite honest to say, being a judge was amazing. It was a lot of fun. I'd love to be invited back to be a judge someday. But I think being a competitor is more fun.
Oh, right. So that goes out to all of you who, because there are a few people in the community that want to come back as a judge. Maybe it's time to make a team and come back as a competitor instead. And yes, I'm looking at you, Chris. So yeah, maybe.
Maybe a team of former judges could be really good.
Well, then we wouldn't have any attendees because no one would, want to go head to head. Yeah, with you guys. So.
Are you sure? Because ultimately we ended up in 5th place and your team beat my team.
Oh, yeah, that's true, right? So both you and Thomas Unser are on the same team, 2 MVPs on a team. And I had my juniors with me, people that started working with the Power Platform in March and August. And we kicked your butt. Because we came in 3rd and you came in 5th, right?
Right. But on the first, we were winning. I realized, the first day we were ahead. We actually won we won 2 of the categories on day 1, which once you understand the point system and the matrices and the calculations and all the maths, you realize that doesn't mean anything. It's really what happens on day 3 is where it really counts.
Yeah.
And you guys came through. We did a little bit of a pivot, I think, on the Friday night to try to move up in another category. I'm not sure if that was the smartest thing we did. But anyways, all in all, it was great. I learned a ton. I didn't do anything Power Pages related, except maybe I know I helped you a little bit. I helped another team a little bit because there was some provisioning issues that cropped up earlier in the weekend. And that's another thing. Like, kudos to you because you couldn't get your site provisioned and we were trying different things, pulling out all our little tricks of the trade of trying to get a Power Pages site up and running. And ultimately you didn't actually get your site provisioned until late Friday, I think.
No, yeah. Before I went to bed on Friday night, that was when I realized my site was provisioned. So first thing Saturday morning, I sat down and started hacking away, trying to get this thing ready.
And you got it going.
I did. Yeah. Actually made a HTML and vanilla JavaScript kind of gameplay map thing where you could move Princess Peach around with arrows on the screen so that when you collision with one of the games, so because we made 5 games and Canvas apps and Copilot. And so that just, opened a new tab on your browser and then you could play the game. And it was really, really funny. I just love that interactive part. And I think that's a kind of a lost art in web development as well, because back in the day, you used to have cursors that would be bubbles all along. And someone had Clippy, in their solution. And web used to be so much more fun. We remember, especially, band sites with new albums coming out. They would have this crazy web page where the whole thing would just turn inside out, upside down, and play music, and it was animations and a lot. And now everything needs to be accessible, responsive, Kind of takes the fun out of it sometimes. I wish more people would just go out of their way to make something that's really cool. So that was what we tried to bring back. And so we had the pink neon going, and of course got Joe being a judge. I know it's all about the pink neon, so we're just trying to bribe him a bit with that. I think it worked.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're going to share links in the show notes so that you can actually go to see that Power Pages site, and as soon as, as long as that's open, or next 90 days, and the website as well to check that out. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, we built, like, I lived in doing Canvas apps all weekend, and I don't do a ton, so it was good for a learning experience. I learned a lot of the ins and outs of how the different variables works in Power Effects and all of this, plus a lot of how to do graphics in Power Apps, even though you wouldn't necessarily for real make a game except for your own fun. But ours was also kind of a maze game that was all AI generated. So it looked ugly because AI doesn't do well at generating graphics. So here we are, thinking it's awesome because it generated this map with the graphics and everything, but it's also AI generated. So some of the villains and stuff came out looking kind of weird, but all in all, it was cool at the end of the day. So I would highly recommend, just from a pure learning experience, either come to ACDC or join any other hackathon. You'll learn 10 times more than I think, don't get me wrong. I love teaching Power Platform classes on different topics, but I just think from a hackathon, if you're that type of hands-on learner, it's definitely one of the great tools to learn something new.
Yeah, definitely. And there are hackathons all over the world, and there's Hack for Goods, but ACDC is kind of special because you stay there for 3 days, and you stay at the same hotel with the same attendees that really you don't know. So if 59 strangers have to get along 3 days in one room, right? It's kind of creates a special atmosphere. And we talked about it because this is the 14th year that we've been running this event, and you can't really find this kind of spirit anywhere else. We find, and we've been traveling and doing this a lot, so it's unique for sure. If you have that, if you can, then yeah, it would be fun to see more teams next year.
Awesome. And then while we were, at the hackathon, the Power Platform and Microsoft community just kept churning out content that we need to take a look at.
Oh yeah, definitely. And because we did the release note episode last time, we kind of have, I think some of the news here is probably a few weeks old, but important nonetheless, and things we have to mention. And first of all, just want to mention something from Tino Rabe, one of our good friends in the community from the Power Pages side of things. He's actually now curating a list and creating a list of Power Pages sites. And this is something that keeps coming up. Customer wants to see, how can we look at examples of Power Pages out there, use cases for Power Pages, things like that. And because it's an external facing website, but often it is, behind authentication, and it's for a specific customer use case, or, it's not something that it's anonymously accessible to most people. So then that's a challenge. But he made a LinkedIn post that has 33 comments and loads and loads and loads of links to other Power Pages sites. So if you're looking for use cases or just examples of Power Pages sites out there, check out that post from Tino. And very good job. We'll share the links.
Yeah, it's great to share through your prospects or customers, because that's a question I think you and I both get a lot of. Customers saying, well, prospects, so, well, can you give us examples of other Power Pages sites? And of course, I think we have our own list of what we can share. I know when I was at Microsoft, there was a list there, but of course, some of the customers don't necessarily want to share this information, or that they're using Power Pages for various reasons. Of course, there's all compliance issues and all that other stuff. But anyways, it's a great initiative to check that out. So while on the topic of Power Pages, there was an interesting article that came up from Andrew Grashenko, and I believe he lives in Australia. Correct me if I'm wrong. Sorry, Andrew, if you're not, but I think that's where you were at. But he wrote an interesting thing on Power Pages versus WordPress versus a custom web app, and he put a little decision tree in place, which is really good, of kind of deciding what kind of platform that you should use when building your website. And it's quite interesting because at the end of the day, there's the it depends factor that goes into this, but it kind of goes through, and it's a good thing if you're building a new website, maybe if you're considering using Power Pages, or should you build this on WordPress, or, then you have the pro developers like, no, we can build this from ground up, to go through that And he's also written articles in terms of the pricing and calculating the cost of ownership of building something custom from ground up versus using Power Pages. So we'll have the link to the show notes in that, so you can see that little decision tree there and understand how to go about, again, this isn't the ultimate, you must follow this tree. It's just another guide to maybe help you make a decision or help you plan out your project. So thanks, Andrew, for creating that post.
Yeah. Is that the same guy that made the infographic that you showed me last week?
No, that's Danny Cahill. And hopefully we'll be able, that's in the future, we'll talk about that because he's going to be posting a podcast that I recorded with him earlier this week on that infographic. So stay tuned for that.
Right. So that's for next time then.
Yes.
All right. And I picked up something else that's not Power Pages related. That really is something I need to dive more into. So, before we had the big conversation about managed, unmanaged is an ongoing thing always in the community. And I saw Natty Turtledove, not sure if that's his real name, but maybe it is, has a blog post series about solution layering, a mystery unveiled. And it goes through and looks and actually tests out what happens if you export a solution, managed or unmanaged, and you import it into another solution. And what happens then? And then another scenario being that you actually made changes in your destination environment, and then you add a new layer on top, of course, then what happens? And one of the things that he found is that when he imports a solution or has made changes to a Canvas app, then the new changes with the new solution won't be applied because there's the solution layer in the middle. You'll have to remove that layer. You lose all the work that you did in order for that new solution to come in and the changes to take effect. Now that's Canvas apps. Model-driven apps works differently. So you would think that this would be, kind of the same way across different solutions. It doesn't. So when you add a new model-driven app in a solution, you add that to your environment, even though you made changes and have an unmanaged layer in between, the sitemap and the model-driven app, the changes that you bring in, they will actually merge with the layer. So this is stuff that I barely understand myself, and I really need to dive into it. And then he also has also made small graphics to show you in a visual way how this works and what actually happens. And I find that's really helpful to understand it because it can become quite complex just talking about it the way that I'm doing now. I really encourage you to go in and look through the blog post that he did, both part 1 and part 2, just to see how he's drawn this up. And maybe this will make it easier to understand going down the line.
Yeah, like the layering. I get the layering is very tricky, and it's evolved and changed over the years too. It's actually different than what it was when that whole concept was sort of introduced earlier on, and they've made it so much better. And by doing so, removed some of the original objections that some people would have had against managed solutions. So definitely, I don't want to get into the debate again, but in terms of solution management, I think every solution architect or Power Platform builder needs to understand, especially when deploying to downstream environments, how the layering works and how it interacts. And I believe it's on probably the PL 200 or PL 400 exams as well. So it's something, or maybe 600, maybe all three, something you definitely need to know.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important, especially like you said, when you go downstream, but also when you have the citizen maker or the business user in your environment making changes as you're working, and you want to have that kind of fusion thing between the pro devs and the things that they're making, and then allow the end users to go in and make their own changes. That will create unmanaged layers, of course. And then to know how to navigate that and how to best work with that's also something to consider, especially if you're working with customers that wants to fiddle with it themselves.
Absolutely. And just working together. So, talking about, stuff working the layers and all these things, I found this really cool site by Eric Donker, and his blog is called Hacking Power Platform. And of course, we're just talking about hackathons. And I know that, as much as we like to work in the Power Platform and there's all these nice best practices and, ways to do things, here he has he calls it sort of the tips and tricks and hidden features. And he has an article on the hidden features of FetchXML. Now, anybody who's worked with the Power Platform or even Dynamics CRM or Dynamics 365, very much well aware of FetchXML. Of course, our friend Jonas Jonas Rapp in Sweden has built the FetchXML builder, which we use religiously to build out FetchXML queries. What Eric's done, it looks like, when you're first reading through the article, it looks like Eric's a big fan of doing OData queries, which of course you can use when, building extending dynamics or extending Dataverse. And then there's a lot you can do with the OData. But then what he's done is given that example in OData, but then a lot of times we realize, we can't do this in FetchXML. We'd have to use an OData query. But he's actually showing you how to, with a few tricks on how to get around and do these things in FetchXML. So you're thinking, okay, where is this valuable? Well, definitely if you're still someone out there that's doing SQL Server reporting services reports, which a lot of people don't know that if you don't want to have Power BI, you can still write SSSR reports in Dataverse, which heavily uses FetchXML. And of course, we get into these arguments, is that a dead technology or not? Still widely using. One of my most popular blog posts is how to set up your workstation to write fetch or SSRS reports, but also on, of course, with, you and I know, again, I know we're not a Power Pages podcast, but this is sort of an area we work in quite a bit, is using FetchXML and custom web templates and be able to extract that data appropriately. So sometimes these, extending or stretching FetchXML is definitely a good skill to have in your toolbox. So, great article, Eric. We really appreciate this. And hopefully, you have some other, I think on your blog post too, you describe the undocumented features of the Power Platform. Having worked in docs, I know that there are certain things that because of, whether they're undocumented or not published, docs always try their best to get as much as possible, but this is great, things like this to work with your projects. Now, he did give the caveat, which we will as well, is that if these things are documented, that may mean they're not necessarily supported as well. So use at your own risk. But sometimes you kind of got to push a little bit to kind of get through a particular feature or requirement. So again, even from a learning experience, it's a great thing to check out.
Yeah. And Eric was on the XRM Toolcast with Daryl and Scott as well, just a couple of months back. So they actually interviewed him and they talked about all this, how he's actually working with Microsoft as a hacker to show them vulnerabilities. And you get some money for doing that. And they talk about the different ways that you can go by hacking it. And then also the security and, the good things about the security, things you need to consider. And also the dynamic between when you make something yourself, when you're doing custom development, you need to know all the things that you're doing and to make sure that you're responsible for the security. And I think that's something that people take a bit too lightly and it's not really talked about enough, how secure and how well documented the security in the platform is, and how much of an advantage that is in this day and age, compared to the custom development. So a great podcast that we'll also put links in the show notes.
I listened to that. I didn't realize it was the same guy. So a great surprise. Cool.
Yeah, very cool. Right. I also picked up something very interesting. I think that was actually this week by, I'm sorry, Nishant Rana, the concurrency control in Power Automate. Now, I work with Power Automate all the time. Doesn't mean that I spend too much time in the pro code parts of it. I try to make my flows as easy and simple as possible, but so I don't really do a lot of work in the custom part of it. But this is something that I'll use a lot going forward, and that is a concurrency thing. So I've seen this before and I didn't realize what it was, but he showed us that he has an example of 500 contact records that he wants to update. Now, it took 37 minutes to go through that and then apply to each action in Power Automate. 37 minutes to go through 5,000 records. And then he enabled the concurrency and set that to 20, meaning that then now the Power Automate will update up to 20 contacts at the same time. The same job took 4 minutes. So that tells you kind of how powerful it is and how important it is to kind of dive a bit more into this than I usually do. And so this is something that, but then of course the order of the order that you update the contacts in won't can't matter if you do it like this, because then it will do updates simultaneously. But that's something to keep in mind. I think that was a good trick.
Yeah, for sure. And in the article as well talks about things. I think everything comes with a price, right? So it's like, yes, so why wouldn't you just turn it on all the time? And it's just sort of like, why don't you always use your turbo button or your race button on your car all the time? Well, because it's going to burn more gas if you're still driving a gas powered vehicle like some of us are. So there he talks about, things like being the API request limit being hit. There are concurrency limits, meaning you can only hit your Dataverse so widely at a given point of time before Microsoft begins to kind of put the brakes on you a little bit to make sure you're not affecting other people in the same tenant. So it's one of these things that, you can use your slider appropriately to get the best performance, but also to consider, maybe it doesn't matter if it's taking half an hour to update these records, but if you do need that speed, yes, you can turn it on, but just be aware of the other things that happen. So it's all about ROI, and it depends, and all the other things we always talk about.
Yeah, you're right. Very good point.
Yeah. So the other, I think, fairly big news that came out, actually, the week we did the episode on the release planner, kind of outside of the world of the Power Platform, but within Microsoft, is the fact that Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365 was now made available to everyone. For a while there, you needed to have a tenant with at least 300 licenses in order to turn that on, but then they opened it up for everybody. So I went in and I spent the money to get my one-man show tenant enabled with Microsoft Copilot. It's very interesting. First off, you had to pay for a year up front. So I was just thought, I'm just going to add it to my subscription, and if I don't like it, I'll just shut it off a month or two later. I had 7 days that I could turn it off, but I didn't. So I paid up for a year, so I'm stuck with it for a year, I guess. But so far, it's pretty interesting. Like, you have the little Copilot in Outlook. So it's kind of like, it's kind of like Clippy. Oh, it looks like you're writing an email, but it's Copilot. And
does it roll its eyes and smile like Clippy?
No. It's not. No, it's pretty lame that way. No, I don't feel a lot of personal connection with Copilot.
I'm glad, actually. That would be pretty disturbing.
It would be kind of weird.
And if you do, there's a call center.
Probably, but manned by Copilots, probably.
Probably.
Like,
and then there you go.
Looks like you're having an inappropriate relationship with an artificial being.
Oh, wow.
Anyways, okay. My favorite thought.
That.
So, but
because the note says Copilot.
Yes, of course.
Did that help?
Yes. Yeah. But I've been using it in PowerPoint. Working on a presentation, working on some decks, and it's not like you can say, "Give me a presentation on blah blah blah," and it just does it for you. Like it can, but it's not going to be that great. But for certain things, I can say refine a particular page, or can you give me a slide and here are the points I want to talk about, and it will generate some stuff. And I find that it actually, from a certain perspectives, it does give some good starting points. On other perspectives, it's a little junky. But you take the good with the bad, and overall, I think it is something that I'm going to probably get more used to. Now, that being said, I also have a subscription to ChatGPT Plus, which usually have open in a browser somewhere, which I'm constantly throwing stuff at. Hey, give me this, give me that, format this into a nice table for me, do this, where a lot of these tools are now actually built into like a Word or a PowerPoint or something. So still early days for me. I'll probably report back over the next year on how things are going, and we'll see a year from now if I'm going to continue on with my subscription or go back to other things. I'm assuming it's going to evolve to the point where I'm going to get dependent on it. This is what happens. I'll say, let me try this out. I get dependent on it, and I can't give it up anymore.
Why do you think you have to pay for a year in advance? They know they're not going to go back on that. And it's so funny. This came out of the blue for me. Were you prepared that suddenly they were opening up for smaller companies? Because I was at the weekend before, I was at a birthday party with my kid. And then I talked to dad, and he works with tech as well. And they said, you as an MVP, do you know if they'll ever, open it up for smaller companies? Because 300 is way too much for us. And I went, I don't see that coming anytime soon. And sure enough, the Monday after, I just, you know what I found?
Guess what's coming?
Sending the link and just go, what? You know what we talked about? So yeah, that was really cool. So that's good. Yeah, Copilot. Yes, next on the list is I saw someone that made a little hack with Power Automate to look for keywords in PDF documents. That was really cool. Yeah, Matthias Schmidt. He's using AI Builder to recognize text in an image or a PDF document to search PDF for keywords. And then, because you would think that there's an action for this, but it's kind of a multi-step thing where you have to first, it searches the PDF document or the image and puts all of the text that it finds into an array. And then you put that array into a string, and then you can search the string for matches against the keywords that contains expression. I find it's not revolutionary. It's probably something that most of you have done multiple times, but to me, it's kind of one of those, I discovered a small, easy, simple thing to do, and I made a blog post about it. And then, I like that. So I think more people should just do that when they discover something smart. Just put it in a blog post and just publish it for everyone to see.
Yeah.
So good job, Matthias.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So the last thing I just want to kind of wrap up with, again, goes a little bit beyond Power Platform, but right now around the world, there's this thing called the AI World Tour. And I know before I flew out here, they had an event in New York, and I was really tempted because New York's not that far from Ottawa. I was tempted to hop on a plane and go down there, and our friend Scott Duro was presenting there, along with April was presenting there as well. And I was like, I kind of want to go. I want to check it out, but just timing, of course, trying to prep for this trip and everything. And of course, with ACDC and all these things, you got to pick your battles. But looking at the calendar around the world, I believe actually today, as we're recording, we've seen other friends of ours like Lisa Crosby and Eliza Benitez talking about the one in Sydney, Australia. And there's other ones coming up in Tokyo, Japan, and Sao Paulo, Brazil, and Paris, and a few other cities that has already been and passed. I am looking for a Canadian city. Microsoft, if you're listening, please add one to the Canadians, like to a Canadian city to the schedule. I will definitely, for sure, you're going to get me to go. So there'll be one person. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. So if you happen to live in one of these cities close by, I think you should check it out, because I'm just seeing the buzz and the response on social media from what people are learning in the labs. And I, talked to Scott as well, what he was presenting. It's just sort of like, this is as much as I know you and we make fun of copilots and we're trying to learn and go through this stuff. Understanding AI is just, like we talked about before, we're living in a world now where AI is completely ingraining itself into everything that we do. And we just need to be fully prepared to embrace and move forward with this and deliver amazing solutions for our customers.
Yeah. And it's what they say, right? AI is not going to take your job. A developer that knows how to use AI will. And I think that's something to take to heart. This is a new tool and we need to learn it like everything else. It's one of those things that, you need to use the new designer and new experience and, new editor and all of that to keep on top of everything. And you need to use this tool as well. So, yes, get on board, people. And I think most people are. You can see that at the hackathon as well. And I used it as well. I developed a really good working relationship with Copilot this weekend as well. So, it's good.
Yeah. But that's the thing. It was actually one of the categories at ACDC was killer AI. So I know last year when I was judging, it was still ChatGPT was new and some folks were dabbling in it a bit. But this time everybody had to, if they wanted to get points in that category, had to dive into it. And we did the same. We were, getting it to generate maps like I talked about earlier. And then your team did some amazing things with AI as well. So it's just sort of, and it's accessible. Like for us, our solution was pretty much 100%, I would say quote unquote low code, using the Copilot Studio and using connectors and things like that. So it's not like you need, data scientists and deep pro devs to utilize this. It's accessible to folks to start building apps with. So that's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And this is just one event. This kind of the kickoff, the event year for us, because we are traveling this. We've talked about this before. I'm not going to do the list again, But the next time I'll see you is actually the MVP Summit first in Seattle.
Mhm.
Then we go to Canada Power Platform Summit.
Yes.
Oh, it's going to be so awesome.
Yeah. So because I'm on the organizing committee for Canadian Power Platform Summit, I get to pump it up a little bit. So yeah, we got the lineup is out there now. Of course, you're speaking, of course. We have other big.
Don't say of course. Sounds like it's preventative. It's not. I had to apply. Like
you had to go through the sessions. Yes. You had to go through the selection and stuff like that. I would have loved to pick all of your sessions that you submitted, but we only were able to choose one. But of course, it's one of your. I've seen that one before too. It's an amazing one and this is something I need to keep learning about styling Power Pages to make them, pretty and like not just functional like I do. Of course, I rely on people like yourself or others that I've worked with in the past just to make the sites really pop and shine. And watching your stuff just truly inspires me. It's just, it's amazing. But we have some other folks. We have some new speakers as well that are, kind of new to speaking into the community. So it's really good. Plus we have established, we have, in terms of superstars of yourself, of course, Lisa Crosby, Mark Smith, Matthew Devaney, and awesome. Yeah, just, and then there's a whole bunch of we're not going to be a huge conference. It's like one day we're going to have 2 tracks. And yeah, we're hoping will be the launching pad for something that's going to be an annual event, the Canadian Power Platform Summit. So it's in Vancouver. We probably will sell out on tickets. And now we are charging a small amount. The reason we're doing that is because, well, first off, to cover some of our costs, but mostly to ensure people are committed to coming. I've run events before where sometimes it's sort of like it's a free event. You wake up on a Saturday morning, you're like, I'd rather do something else. And it's fine if that's okay, but it's also for us as organizers, we don't want to waste food. We want to make sure we get good value for our sponsors, and we've have amazing sponsors. And we also want to make sure that, that our speakers as well, that they have full rooms that they're talking to, that they're engaging with the community. So that's why we are charging a little bit of a small fee. It's like, I think 25 Canadian, which is like nothing basically. And then what's going to happen with the surplus of that money after some of our costs are covered, that portion will be given to charity. As well as we're trying to make sure if there's food left over, we're going to make sure that goes to charitable organizations. So we're trying to be sustainable, all the good things for this event as well. But so check that out. That is March 16th in Vancouver, British Columbia. Full day event at the Microsoft offices, Canadian Power Platform Summit.com.
Oh, I've seen videos and pictures of that venue. I can't wait to get to that place. It looks so amazing.
I'm just so excited you're going to come to Canada finally after years of me saying, when are you going to come visit? But even though it's the other side of the country, but still.
It's Vancouver.
Baby steps. We'll get you to Ottawa soon enough.
Maybe I won't know the difference because, put in the middle box. Right. And then, as you said, this weekend, if you kind of drop you in the middle of a Norwegian forest and tell you it's Canada, you probably couldn't tell the difference because the nature is so similar. So we'll see. Maybe I just stay there because I don't think I've gone anywhere. That was going to be loads and loads of fun. So I hope to see all your Canadian friends and colleagues and followers and all of that. It's really cool. Right.
Yeah. And then there's a big long list of other stuff happening. We got a joint session at Color Cloud. We didn't talk about that.
We didn't know it. I love that.
No, sorry.
No, that's for June.
Correct. Sorry. Yeah. We have a joint session at European Power Platform Conference. We're both going to
summer.
Yes, we're both going to Color Cloud, but we have a joint session at European Power Platform Conference. That's the news. Sorry. That's in June. Plus, there's a whole bunch of others. It is conference season's upon us.
I feel that's all year round at this point.
It probably is.
Yeah, it's just a couple of months during the winter holiday and the holidays. So it's not, and then
Cool.
Yes.
And we're under time.
33 minutes is not under time. But
mine says, that's not good. Mine says 25.
Oh, no. Oh, well, we'll see how this goes, people.
Yeah. Well, maybe we have to do these podcasts in person all the time.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, maybe we have to. Yeah. All right. So next episode will probably be around February 20th. And until then, have a wonderful time, people. Catch you later.
Hey, thank you for listening. If you like this episode, please make sure you share it with your friends and colleagues in the community.
And be sure to leave a rating or a review on your favorite streaming service. That makes it easier for others to find us. Follow us on social platforms and make sure you don't miss a single episode. Thank you for listening to the Power Platform Boost podcast with your host, Lorika Akabek and Nick Dolman. See you next time for your timely boost of Power Platform news and updates.